What's up, guys? So, by now, we've all been following along with the Sig P320 shitstorm that has been brewing and expanding and just evolving kind of hilariously over the past, I don't know, 6 months to a year. Like a lot of you, I've been watching Ben Stoker's videos. I think it might be pronounced Stager, I'm not sure, but he kind of follows along with the drama. I've watched some of Protraband's videos, and he goes into detail on these issues. So it's just kind of interesting to kind of watch this drama unfold. And I think Protraband actually released a new video today about, or yesterday or something, about a potential uncommanded discharge in looks like mall security or something like that. I haven't watched the whole video; it's like an hour long, but. So that's interesting. And interestingly, a few days ago, Sig just actually, and I just looked at this before I sat down to film this, Sig just actually released a new P320 variant, the P320 MOD. And I guess it's probably kind of coincides with the NRA convention here that's, I think, went on last weekend. But I guess it's the Max Michel off-duty edition. And, it's just another P320 with a bunch of features and bells and whistles on it. But, I looked at the comments in this release, and if you've been following this, they're pretty much exactly what you'd expect. But I'll just read a few of them here. And again, the thing's called the P320 MOD. And one comment says, MOD may occasionally discharge. Another guy says, P320, because when you're ready to transition, we're here for you. I would feel safer dropping soap in prison. Man, that gun looks great. Could you make any gun enjoyer accidental discharge? I don't know, maybe English is not that person's first language, but I only clicked on this for the comments. Yes, exactly. So, and that kind of brings me what I want to talk about in this video. And like with all the content I mentioned that's already out there, you can look at the situation, kind of make your own decisions on it. I'm not going to talk about what may or may not be going on. I think, again, the evidence is there for you to draw your own conclusions. But what I want to talk about, and what's interesting to me, is the consumer response to these issues or potential issues. And I think the way consumers are responding to Sig Sauer having problems is different than how I've seen consumers respond to situations where other gun companies are having problems. And these comments I just read through are kind of what I'm talking about. And long story short, that was my team's meeting chiming, so I'll have to ignore that for a few minutes while I talk. But those comments I just went through are kind of what I'm talking about. And long story short, people just want to eviscerate this company. People want to take this company down. And for lack of a better word, people just seem to fucking hate Sig Sauer. There is just this virulent hate for Sig Sauer as a company. And I'm not necessarily saying that's the wrong way to feel. Don't misinterpret this video. And in some cases, I feel somewhat that way as well. And but I want to explore why that is. Why do we see people having this kind of just vehement hatred and just ire towards this company? And I think, there are a couple main reasons. And I think fundamentally it's an issue of trust. And when you look back at the modern iteration of Sig Sauer's track record over, the past 10 to 15 years, there's no shortage of things that are just kind of, raise some eyebrows in terms of their quality control and their, like we've all heard, their tendency to beta test new products on consumers. And just as an example, I have one of the new American-made Sig P320s, and I do have a full review on it. I actually love that gun. I think it's a phenomenal gun, and it's very accurate. It's been very reliable, but I can't say I didn't have an issue with it. If you kind of look through content on the newer iteration of the P210, you'll find some stuff about guide rods breaking. And, long story short, the part they use for the guide rod is freaking defective. It consistently breaks. And lots of people have had the issue with it. I've broken 2 of them. And it's not a huge deal. Like the tip of the guide rod pops off and the spring comes loose, and then you've got to manually compress the spring when you're reassembling it. So, I mean, it doesn't undermine the way the pistol works. It's still reliable and it still shoots well. But it's just an example of of Sig just ignoring the issue. And it's very clear that there's a problem with that part. And Sig just doesn't give a shit. They don't acknowledge it. They don't own it. And I even called them. I talked to customer service and I was like, hey, I've got a P210. I wanted to know if there was any updates to the recoil spring assembly, and would you be able to send me a new part if there are any updates? And of course they acted like they had no idea what I was talking about. Do you want to send the pistol in? And it's like, no, I don't need to send the pistol in. I know the issue. Just fix the fucking part and make a part that doesn't suck, And so it's things like that. And the P365 had some teething issues when it first came out. I don't remember exactly what the issue was with the early P365s. I want to say it was something to do with the striker. But again, they resolved that, and the P365 I think is fine now. I've heard there were and are some issues with the P938. I saw some comments on my video of the P210 about that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's the same type of thing. People ask about it, and it's pretty clear that it's a consistent issue. Sig does nothing about it. Obviously, the initial issues with the P320 were that it wasn't drop safe. And, Sig they ignored that too. They didn't ignore it, but they denied it. And instead of having a proper recall and just taking ownership of the problem, they had this ridiculous voluntary upgrade program. And it's like, come on, give me a freaking break. And I remember back in the early 2010s when Sig was kind of updating the manufacturing processes for their classic P22X line, going to MIM extractors and like some MIM internal parts and stuff. They had some issues with that. And at one point, the New Jersey State Police literally sued Sig Sauer because their P229 just weren't working. And, I think in isolation, any one of those issues could be like, okay, yeah, gun companies have problems and they overcome them and it's not that big of a deal. But you have all those things that are occurring over, a pretty... for like I said, 10 to 15 years. And then you have a company that just denies, ignores, and just kind of tries to weasel out of any accountability for those things. And people just don't trust this company anymore. And so that has just eroded trust in what Sig Sauer has become. And I think the other side of that, this lack of trust, is that a lot of us remember what Sig Sauer once was and what this company meant, what this company stood for. And Sig Sauer was a celebrated brand, and it represented trust. It represented reliability and quality. And, the guns that Sig Sauer made back in the 80s and 90s were some of the best handguns ever made. And I think in the 80s, it's not unreasonable to say that Sig Sauer made the best handguns in the world. SIGs were the FBI guns, the Navy SEAL guns. And if you look, back at the XM9 trials, the Sig P226 was just kind of on another level in terms of it's just reliability and consistency, and its mean rounds between stoppages were just unheard of at that time. And so we go from that to what we have now, this company that is just, in so many people's eyes, become untrustworthy. And they're using this name that used to stand for something that was just sacred in the eyes and the hearts and the minds of so many gun enthusiasts. It makes it hurt more. because it's almost like a reminder of what we've lost. And I think that's why people are so pissed at Sig Sauer. And it's like the modern iteration of Sig Sauer seems like an imposter. And it's like they've taken what was once so sacred, like I said, and important to us as gun enthusiasts. And I have always been a big fan of Sig Sauer and its original incarnation. I own more Sigs than any other brand of gun. But they're all like the older Sigs, except for that P210 that I have. And again, I really like that gun. I think Sig Sauer is capable of making excellent guns, but just in that instance, like whatever, they're just too big and too full of themselves and too arrogant to own up to any wrongdoing. And all they would have to do is make a slight tweak to that guide rod, and the gun would be perfect, really. So I think that's what people are feeling. This lack of trust, and a lack of trust that's exacerbated by a company that feels disingenuous compared to what it is supposed to represent in people's minds. I think now with the internet, people are starting to realize that they have power as consumers. Consumers can really exert an influence on the success and failure of companies and their bottom line. And I think people are seeing now this avenue with the recent P320 drama to kind of, take Sig Sauer under, and they feel justified in lashing out at this company. I think gun enthusiasts want to see gun companies succeed, so it's interesting to see how people are reacting to Sig Sauer, and just some other examples like Smith & Wesson. Like they've had some teething issues on some of their products recently. I want to say that 22 Magnum pistol that they had, like that had some problems, and I want to say like the Shield EZ guns, they had some issues, and but Smith & Wesson owns it. They had recalls and they fixed it, and like no one like wants to see Smith & Wesson fail. And like, geez, I mean, how many times has Colt like just dropped the ball? And but you see people still rooting for Colt. They want to see Colt do well, and it's just not the same for Sig Sauer because of the reasons I mentioned. So moving forward, like what do people want to see happen with Sig? And like I said, it's like a lot of the people that are mad about this love Sigs, like me. I love the classic Sigs. I think they're some of my favorite handguns, and it's like I don't want to see those go away necessarily, but I want to see a change, and I think that's what people are hungering for, and I think that's what that's in all this efforts to kind of bring the modern iteration of Sig down. I think that's ultimately what people are hoping for. I'm thinking maybe they want to see some sort of reboot with the company. Maybe the current management who kind of facilitates and promotes this culture of just dishonesty. I think people want to see that go. Maybe there's a rebrand, maybe there's a reorg, something like that. I just think it's interesting to see what is transpiring with Sig, and like I said, looking at why it's the reaction to what is happening with Sig is different than people's reactions to other gun companies. So I will obviously keep watching all this stuff, as I'm sure all of you will, and it's interesting to see how it unfolds, and we'll see what, if Sig Sauer changes their tone on any of this, and we'll see what happens. So I appreciate you watching. I will talk to y'all later.